Okay, today we're talking about the last of Dr. Covey's, I will use this in case anybody has trouble hearing, last of his 7 habits, Sharpen the Saw. But we, of course, last week we didn't really have a formal class because of the holiday, so I wanted to touch on some of the key concepts of Habit 6, Synergize. So I do want to talk about that just a little bit. You should have watched the video version of the lecture that I gave in the other section, and that did meet last week. So you did have makeup material that was on Moodle that you should be paying attention to, that will be on your quizzes. So I didn't have a lot of time, even though in the other one the student presentation went very long last week. So even in the other class I did this review because I didn't have a lot of time in class. To start off with, I would like 4 strong young men to come on up here and for a demonstration. Maybe from the back row. You guys are kind of sleeping back there. Come on up. Here, come on. I need 4 of you. Come on up. Come on up. Yeah, I need 4, so come on up. Okay, 1 more. There's 3. 1 more. Okay, there you go. Okay. These all look like strong young men, athletically skilled and powerful. So the first thing I'm going to ask them to do is try to position themselves in 90 and 90 degrees. So as much as possible, 90 degrees here, 90 degrees here, and hold that position. 90 degrees. So it's actually impossible to do 90 and 90. You die in about a second. But as close as possible, get your knees at 90 degrees and your back at 90 degrees, and see how long you can do that. Right now. Yeah. Right now. Okay, so. Well, these are nowhere close to 90. Come on. That's like 45-degree knees there. But I think you probably did enough. You realize that if your knees were really at 90 degrees and your back at 90 degrees, you wouldn't be there very long, right? But maybe we can help a little bit. And so I want you to do this instead. So the key to this, we need to close that window a little bit, it's kind of hard to see, is get your shoulders at somebody else's knees. Okay, so you have to help yourself. You're going to have to probably hold yourself with one hand at first. So, for example, one of you go like this, and that person puts their shoulders on that knee. He goes that direction. Then that person puts their shoulder on that knee, and then you lift up all your hands, and you're holding each other up. Get the concept?
Focus.
Okay, so somebody put your shoulders on his. Okay, so somebody's shoulders go there. It's best if you do it pretty fast. We're making a square. Okay, so your shoulders are going to go on his knees.
Kidney problems cannot straight.
Okay. Now it's your turn now. Your shoulder is, okay, good, good, yeah. You're a good engineer. Your shoulder's there. But when you're all there, when you get there, they'll be easier. So your turn. Don't make it stand there too long. Okay. Well, if they get this right, they could stay there quite a while. If they're off a little bit, maybe not so much. But, okay, thank you guys. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay, so the point of this is that's a physical manifestation of synergy. If you do it right. If you do it right, like these guys up here are doing it, you can stay there for an hour. And you're much more than 90 degrees. The knees are at 90 degrees, and after that, it's even, you could not do that without each other. Let me put it that way. You couldn't accomplish that sort of a direction. Like I say, you can't even do this for very long. If you get 90 degrees and 90 degrees, it's impossible to keep that by yourself more than a few seconds, and even then you'll probably fall down. So the point is that in synergy, we can do things that we can't do. We can do things together, things that we can't do by ourselves. There's different types of synergy, or different aspects of it. Mental, emotional, psychological. Mental is the kind of the easy one in the sense that you can understand why people can support each other, as in the demonstration. You can understand that intellectually, but sometimes you need you're not as necessarily as persuaded emotionally. For example, because in emotionally, it means that you may disagree with each other. And if you're trying to work with other people and they disagree with you, the first response very frequently is to defend yourself. Wait a second, I don't think you're right. I think you should be doing it this way. And then you defend yourself. Aha, no, I'm right. No, you're right. You're wrong. Yeah, you can start arguing with each other. And so any efforts to make synergy in an intellectual way can break down rather quickly because of people's defensive mechanisms. So it has to be accepted emotionally as much as intellectually that this is a good thing. Dr. Covey points out that you should actually celebrate when somebody disagrees with you. And don't be defensive, but be accepting that their idea might give you a different perspective than what you would have had by yourself. And so celebrate when somebody has a different idea and honestly consider whether their idea has value in what you were thinking. And maybe you need to adapt. And that's where you get the idea. Previously we were talking about the third option. In win-win situations, the third option. You should watch a series of videos about pursuing the third option. And so the third option it comes out of synergy. It comes out of is a synergistic revelation that together you can come up with ideas you wouldn't have had by yourself, and you can build one idea and another idea. Many years ago, more than 20 years ago, I was elected to the city council of the city I lived in. And before that, there was, almost seemed like every week or so, there was a story in the newspaper about people in the city council getting angry at each other, yelling at each other in the meetings. They were also having trouble in their relationship with other agencies, such as the library district that maintained the libraries. There was just a lot of discord, a lot of infighting within the city council. And so when I was elected, even before I was sworn in and took my position officially, I talked to them about maybe having a retreat and going someplace and doing some sincere brainstorming about what we really wanted to accomplish. And so the very first month that I was on the city council, we did that. They said they arranged for us to go to a town about an hour away and rented rooms for us, and we were there I think 3 days. And the whole time, the whole purpose was to brainstorm and decide, what was our vision for the future of our city. It was run very well. They hired somebody to kind of oversee the brainstorming. One of the rules is in brainstorming that you can't attack somebody or their ideas directly. You first off have to listen to everybody's ideas, get a full understanding of their ideas, which is, in other words, seek first to understand, then to be understood, basically. So you get a full understanding of somebody's idea, and then instead of attacking it, you can ignore it if you want to. But if you think there's some merit in that idea, then you can build on it. So you can say, somebody said, like in city council, somebody said we should do something to develop. There's a big park along the river that runs through our city, that we should do something to develop that park. Well, now, I agreed with that in concept, but my concept was to let it be help, because we didn't have much money, we were financially strapped, was to let private enterprise develop the park and let them come in and let one person put in a water slide, one company, and another company put in some boats that you could rent, let somebody else do something else. And so I could take the first person's idea of, gee, we need to do something with this nice park, this 350-acre park along the river, and I could add my idea. That's a good idea. I think we should do it through private enterprise and share my idea. And somebody else could build on that and so forth. So we went through that process of brainstorming where, again, we didn't attack anybody or any idea, but we built on ideas and came up and shared ideas. And so the question wasn't, why shouldn't we do something, but how could we do it? That became the key question. That's one of the key questions I found in dealing with bureaucracies, that in almost every bureaucracy I've had to fight with, university bureaucracies, government bureaucracies, their first question is basically, why can't we do it? Their first question is never, how can we do it? And so sometimes you have to encourage them, and that was, in essence, is what part of brainstorming is all about. Seeking that synergy is ignore for a little bit why we can't do it and look at how we can do it. Financially, legally, whatever else the other questions that there might be. So, as a result of that, we actually came up with like 90 different ideas of things that we want to do for the city over those 2 or 3 days that we were there. And then we prioritized them. We voted and ranked them. And so they were in a ranked list, number one priority by the 7 council members to the lowest priority. It was interesting because, first off, by the fact that we all were part of that experience, the anger was taken out of the interactions of city council members. They all felt like they were part of the decision-making process. Even if their idea was ranked a little bit lower than they would like to have been, they still weren't angry about it. They was on the list. It was somewhere on the list that people were considering their idea. They felt part of that team that created this list of ideas. And then we proceeded to work and achieve those ideas. And there was almost, there were always, you don't expect 7 people in a city council to agree on everything, and that obviously did not happen. We frequently disagreed on how to carry out these goals we had created. But there was a lot less rancor, a lot less emotion involved as we proceeded as a city council. And what was interesting is after I left, I was on city council for 4 years, and then left city council. They were still working on this list of ideas that we created 10 years later. They were still working on them. And so it gave the city a vision for quite a long time, for quite a long term. So I know intellectually, I know how important brainstorming is, and I think, again, if people can get over some of the emotional challenges of working with other people, and if they can bring down their defense mechanism and encourage people to listen, seek first to understand, then to be understood, this works extremely well, extremely well. Psychologically, we'll come to that in a second. So it's important that also that we understand that we have perceptual limitations. We talked about it. I talked about it, I think, early in this course about the idea of multiple intelligences, and the Howard Gardner. I always forget his name. Howard Gardner was the creator of that idea, and I've mentioned before that what he did was looked at child geniuses. And so, you have a kid that's 3 years old and they're playing the piano as if they were 23 years old or more. They may be composing their own music and stuff like that. You can see a 4-year-old that's doing calculus already. There's child geniuses can do stuff you can't. We look at them in awe and say, how in the world could they possibly do that? They're so young, whatever. But they do. And so Gardner's belief was that the very fact that somebody has intelligence like that must mean we have a seed of that intelligence in all of our brains. Somehow we didn't tap into it. I can't play the piano somehow. Just because a 3-year-old can, I can't. And so forth. So, and also one of the things that he realized was that almost nobody, well, in fact, as far as I know, nobody is a genius in all areas. They might be a genius and probably almost always a genius in only one area. He considers there's somewhere between 8 and 13 different types of intelligence. He's not really sure. He's kind of arguing with himself sometimes as to how many types of intelligence there really is. There really are, but somewhere between 8 and 13. And as I said, almost as far as I know, nobody is a genius in more than 1 or 2 of them at the most. And again, that's unclear, like I said, how many there are. So there may be some kind of overlapping intelligences, or somebody might have 2 of them. And in fact, my premise is that almost all of us are very weak in some intelligences. It's just different. We have different weaknesses. And I would say that some of us are, if you can use the R word that American students have been taught to hate, some of us are retarded. We are all retarded in some form of intelligence. Just like we all are strong in some form of intelligence, we're also retarded in some forms of intelligence. And that's part of our human nature. Well, when you start thinking about intellectually about how it is that synergy, that brainstorming and synergy can be created and why it's valuable, that's part of it, is that our brains all work differently. We see things very differently. And so emotionally, it is important that we actually truly appreciate the differences, that we actually truly appreciate that you have a high intelligence in one area that I'm weak in, and I have high intelligence in an area that you're weak in, and together we can create something much more, much stronger and so forth because of our differences, not because we're the same, not because we didn't disagree with each other, but because we saw a different perception. We saw something, this can kind of be demonstrated by these sorts of games or illustrations. What do you see on the left side? What do you see on that left side? What's the picture you see on the left side? Anybody? What do you see there? What's that picture of on the left side? Huh? What is it? A duck. Does everybody see a duck on the left side? How many see something else? You see a rabbit. You see a duck too. How many people see the rabbit? Okay, how many people see the duck? How many see both? Okay, well, and some of you are smarter than I am, because I even though I'd seen this before and I knew I had to go back and remind myself what the second image was. I saw the duck. I could not see the rabbit until I reminded myself that's what I was supposed to be looking at, that there was a rabbit there, and then I could see it once I was reminded what the second image was. I immediately saw the duck. I had to be told that there was a rabbit there, basically. The second one is very similar to the other one of the images we saw early in the course. So how many people, when you look at the second image there, immediately see the old woman in that picture? How many people see the old woman? How many people can see the old woman now that I told you there's an old woman? How many cannot see an old woman in this picture? Okay, so like I said, we did, maybe some of you weren't in the class when we looked at it the first time, but there's an old woman, and how many people see the young woman? Okay, so with the young woman, her nose is right here, tiny little nose. You can't see her eyes. She's turned away. This is her ear here. This is her chin, her neck, and kind of a necklace or something around the neck. Whereas the old woman, this is her nose, this is her eye, this is her chin, her mouth. So again, these sorts of pictures illustrate that we see things differently. Now they've done it on purpose. So you see, if once you can get into your mind, you can see both a young woman there and an old woman. And much of life is that way. We see things so differently, and we can't understand sometimes why somebody else doesn't see life the way we see it. In politics in America right now, that's what I'm noticing, and it scares me to the degree that the liberals absolutely cannot understand the concerns of the conservatives, and the conservatives cannot understand the concerns of the liberals, and to the point of where I'm afraid of violence. Has been violence against the conservatives. The conservatives tend to be, even though a lot of TV shows like to talk about those scary conservatives, they own all the guns, and I was just watching, one of my favorite shows is NCIS. I don't know if you've ever seen NCIS. It's a kind of like the police arm of the Navy. But anyway, NCIS, in multiple of their shows, they've been going out after these crazy conservatives that are trying to kill all the Muslims or the blacks or whatever. And I was thinking to myself, actually, I haven't heard of any group like that, any conservative group doing something like that since there was a couple of guys that exploded a big bomb in Oklahoma City about 25 years ago and killed a lot of people. But it was actually a small conspiracy. There was actually only 3 or 4 people in that conspiracy. And so the liberal Hollywood is extremely liberal, about 9-to-1 donations to the Democrats and to the Republicans, are always talking about those scary conservative conspirators. But in reality, there's been one in 25 years that actually has hit the news that there was a conservative conspiracy to kill. Well, in this case, they were attacking the government, blew up a government building. But that's their narrative. That most conservatives are people like my brother, who's a businessman, my father, who's a farmer, people like that. Especially small business people are almost all Republican, whereas Democrats are typically teachers, government workers, professors, Hollywood people. Anyway, there's a big divide there. But most conservatives are not wackos. They're actually family people. More likely to have families, more likely to have kids, more likely to own their own home, more likely to, just be normal people that want to live a safe life. But anyway, you have this narrative, though, something. So my point, although, is just simply they see each other in totally different light, to the degree that all the Hollywood shows are convinced that there's all these conservative conspirators out there plotting to overthrow the government, plotting to kill all the Muslims and all the Mexicans and whoever else doesn't look like or sound like them, and that isn't the case. But nonetheless, that's what they see. Part of this creation of synergy also depends on the psychological aspect of it, which is, again, going back to the idea of seek first to understand, then be understood. If somebody is opening themselves up to hear your perspective, that is, as Dr. Covey explained earlier, this is very important psychologically because it's kind of hard to get angry at somebody who says, I appreciate your idea. Why don't you explain your idea a little better to us? If that's how they approach you when you have a different idea, how can you be mad at them? You can't be. If, on the other hand, you share your idea and they tell you all the reasons why it's stupid and unpractical, then up comes your psychological barriers. And so that's why in brainstorming, they frequently have a trained professional to guide it, and they make sure that that negative interaction doesn't happen. They want to make sure that everybody treats each other's and their ideas with respect. But in the real world, we have to control that. In the real world, you can create an entire company, create synergy in your entire company, for example, your entire organization, by making it open to people sharing their ideas and treating it with respect. The computer technology company, HP, has set up a kind of their own private Facebook to do this. So people on their Facebook can share their ideas and other people can brainstorm it, give their, oh yeah, that, we could do this and this and this. And so they're carrying on brainstorming 24 hours a day, basically. 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They're brainstorming through their social medium, their private social medium that's restricted just to their own people. And so it's possible to create this sort of synergy throughout an organization in different ways, but that's one of the ways that I happen to, write about in a book a couple of years ago that I think is very positive, using the technology we have to create a synergistic atmosphere. One of the other things they like to do, one of the things they've done in some companies is they've created teams of people that are from different departments. And so they've gotten them away from just their own perspective. All the IT people think one way, all the marketing people think another way, whatever. And to break them out of it, they start creating teams, interdepartmental teams, so that they can explore ideas from a different perspective and make it a little more realistic. That, by the way, is what's happening in marketing right now. I'm writing about it in a book that's going to be published next year, that in marketing teams today, things have become so technical, and a lot of it is one of the key aspects of marketing today is personalization. Personalization is based on databases. And so they found that basically marketing teams, most companies are now reorganizing their marketing teams to have somebody on it who's strong in databases and somebody who's strong with IT, along with people who are strong in marketing, with the message creation, you might say. There are probably a lot of companies are having to add people with video, because you have people that have good ideas, but they don't have the skills in video. And so they're having to add people in, specialists with video background. In order to have the ideal marketing team of today, you have to have people with different skills, because that's what the internet is and what the opportunities on the internet are providing us. You need personalization through the databases. You need to understand, there's an entire, you've probably heard of the term SEO, search engine optimization, but there's a field of search engine optimization which is basically technical SEO, and it's basically defined as any SEO that is dependent on technology. And there are a lot of technical aspects to SEO, and so it's become an entire different branch of SEO. You have your technical aspect of SEO, you have your social media aspect of SEO, you have your video portion of SEO. You have all these different branches of how do you optimize your website for for people to find you on the search engine and so forth. And again, pointing out that in this day and age, we need to see different perspectives if we're going to be successful. So these are just in lots of different areas where we're seeing not just the opportunity for synergy, but the necessity of synergy if you're to be competitive in this current world. Okay, so that's kind of, I just wanted to kind of review again synergy before we go to habit 7, which is take time to sharpen your saw. Covey himself, I've not been able to find a video about sharpening the saw from Covey. I probably should have gotten some audio. I do have some of his DVDs that he's created. I might have been able to find some of his discussion on one of his DVDs, but I didn't think about that. So, but there are some other people, because there's kind of a vacuum on internet. He's talked about everything else, but he didn't talk about sharpen the saw on any YouTube videos, or at least to any great degree. So, I'm going to go show a couple of videos here, and so to do that, I'm going to turn this off a second, and okay, I'm going to stop it. Okay, so as he mentioned, actually Abraham Lincoln lived in the frontier of America. It was rather unusual or rather strange that for some reason both of the presidential candidates from that year came from Illinois, and of course, and Abraham Lincoln had built his own home with logs, and chopped down trees to build his house and to do other stuff like all the other people that were pioneers in the western United States in those days. So if anybody knew about sharpening his axe, it was Abraham Lincoln, and he was, I would say, most Americans probably agree that he was the greatest of the American presidents. They've touched on all of these, but I think maybe not adequately in the videos. But think about all of these. Physical, for example, if it doesn't mean that you have to, like I know I have extra weight I wish I could get rid of, but I'm also out enough. I try to walk. If I'm just walking, I'll try to walk 12 kilometers a day. If I'm swimming, I'll try to swim without stopping for an hour, hour and a half. I still have lots of energy. And so even if you are fighting a weight problem, I know a lot of people that are overweight that have strong energy, but it requires, so the main thing is set up your habit, so to speak, of taking care of yourself. And then, if it's a weight problem, I'm not saying you shouldn't worry if you're overweight. Obviously, there's a chance that those of us that are overweight are going to die younger and stuff like that. But the main thing is to have the energy. And it is, some of the football players and stuff in America are, over 300 pounds, but they work hard enough that they have very high energy despite their size. And so it's important that you take care of your body. In whatever, there's other people that are very slim who are totally out of shape, who couldn't run a mile if their life depended on it. And so it's not always the shape of your body that matters. It's, again, whether you've kept up your exercise enough to get your heart, beating at a fast rate every day, and so you can maintain energy when other people are slacking off. And that this is also one that kind of suggests. In every case, we need to try to do this, have these habits of self-renewal pretty much every day. You can't exercise once a week and expect that to be very effective. Even if you exercise all day once a week, it's not as effective as if you exercise for an hour or two every day. And so we need to try to build these into our lifestyle as best we can. And it's true, if it's true for physical, I think it's pretty much true for the other 3 dimensions as well, that we need to try to do that. Spiritual dimension, spiritual means different things to different people. Some of them relate spiritual being very strongly linked to belief in God. I happen to fall in that category. But to other people, spiritual might just be kind of the self-awareness that Dr. Covey talks about. The fact that we are different than other animals in the sense that we can argue with ourselves, that we can debate with ourselves whether what we're doing is right or wrong, whether we're doing things as effectively as we should be doing them, and so forth. The fact that we can debate with ourselves is a spiritual dimension. That we are this self-consciousness. Some people also can call it a conscience, whether we have a conscience telling us what's right or wrong. So there's a spiritual dimension, whether or not you associate it with God at all, that is important to contemplate. I would also tie spiritual dimension with taking the time for inspiration. I think I mentioned at an earlier class the idea that being bored is a good thing. Finding time to be bored is important. And in fact, you might say that for the greatest inspiration, I believe you have to put yourself in a position of being bored, because it takes a while to get rid of all your thoughts about what you need to be doing, what you should be doing now, why you shouldn't be wasting your time trying to seek inspiration. You need to work, you need to work, you need to work. And so there's this, you almost have to sometimes, if you haven't built a habit of prayer or meditation or yoga or something like that, if you haven't built a habit into it every day to where you can download all your concerns and frustrations and stuff in a quick fashion, then for me, I've had to go out in the mountainside for 8 hours before I felt the inspiration I was after. The first 7 hours was, walking and after a while, starting dumping all this garbage in my brain and appreciating the beautiful views, listening to the birds, singing, and so forth. And then after several hours, then I could feel inspiration. And again, whether you believe that inspiration comes from within your right brain or whether you believe it comes from God or whatever you want to believe, that's not the point. It does, however, the point is in order to feel inspiration, you need to give yourself some space to be able to ponder, meditate, whatever you want to call it. Even Dr. Covey, in a video that we may watch here yet today, or if not on your own, talks about how he himself went out to the beach and spent a day on the beach, and he came back feeling not only refreshed but re-inspired. He had some new ideas of what he could do and so forth. That might have been what led to his book called The Eighth Habit. There's an Eighth Habit book as well. And the Eighth Habit is about, basically the premise is going from effective to outstanding or exceptional. And the idea of going from effective to exceptional, he says, is passion. That people need to feel passionate about what they're doing and center their lives around that passion. And that will make you great. You need to figure out what it is that you would devote your life to, even if you weren't being paid, that you would die for, perhaps. If you can feel passion like that, then you're more likely to become exceptional, not just effective. And so that's his eighth habit that's not part of this book. And that's usually something you find as part of your spiritual dimension. That there's something that has such meaning, such overriding meaning that you, like I said, would sacrifice your life for it, perhaps. The mental dimension, I associate this mostly, and again, I don't think the video's adequately touched on it, but I associate it most with lifelong learning. We've talked about this a little bit before. And all these areas, by the way, are very much, as one of this videos just said, very much tied to that, if you remember the time matrix, things that were urgent, things that were important. And the area that makes the most impact on people's lives is the second quadrant in that time matrix, that things that are not urgent but are important. If you can identify, as Dr. Covey said in that chapter, if you can answer the question, what could I be doing on a regular basis that would totally change my life. But I'm not doing it now. That is almost by definition in the second quadrant. It's something that is not urgent, therefore you're not getting around to doing it, but you recognize how important it is. It could change your life, but you're not doing it. And of course, we talked about before, that could go into different roles, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your career, whether it's in school, whatever. What can you do? As we think about the mental side of it, I can tell you absolutely in this day and age more than ever, but even in my young years, when I was your age, a lot of the difference in my life has been the fact that I've been a lifelong learner. When I was your age, there was no such thing as a PC. It was the first PCs came out about 5 years after I got my bachelor's degree. When I got my master's degree, there were still no PCs, at least not very many on campus at all. I had to run my data through a mainframe computer. I had to hire somebody to do punch cards, to punch all the data into punch cards to run through a mainframe computer. I did not have access to a PC to run my own data. There were some PCs by then, by the time I did my master's degree, but they didn't have Excel or anything. They didn't have any very sophisticated software. Very simple software, very weak computers and simple software as I was working on my master's degree. But luckily, I think part of it was a little bit luck. My ex-father-in-law, now ex-father-in-law, was interested in that sort of stuff, even though he's a farmer. And so he bought one of the first Radio Shack computers. And his sons, youngest sons, who were a lot younger than I was, a lot younger than their older sister that I had married, started figuring out, started working in programming and stuff in those early years. And one of them ended up being one of the top engineers at Hewlett-Packard. One of them was a top engineer at another at Novell, which I think has gone broke now. But anyway, they both still work in that industry, and so they taught me a lot. But I also was just curious, and so I remember in the 1980s, after there were PCs, but Microsoft hadn't taken over the industry yet, and so it was still fragmented. You had software, but it came from different companies. It was incompatible with each other. It was an odd time in the PC era. But there was a program called DBase that was a database, and I was teaching part-time at the university while I was working at the newspaper. And courses were free if we wanted to take a course, so I decided I was going to take the database course. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why I took that course. But I was just curious. And then when Microsoft did kind of take over, a few years later, about 5 years later, they kind of took over the Windows became the operating system of choice, so it took over. And I left journalism to go into marketing for family reasons. As an editor at a daily newspaper, I was going to work in the late afternoon and staying up till 2 in the morning, making sure checking the last paper before as it's coming off the press to make sure it's all okay. And so by the time I'd get home, relax a little bit, and go to bed, and then by the time I'd get up again, my kids would be gone to school. I worked weekends, so I didn't see them on weekends very much. So anyway, I had incentives to go ahead and and change my career for a period of time, and went into PR marketing. And suddenly I found the importance of database, and I learned to access database, and it was one of the most important things in marketing. It is now, today. I mentioned it earlier, that personalization in marketing is one of the most important concepts we have today. When you go to Amazon.com, for example, they already know what you've been looking for in the past, and they start showing you books that you might be interested in now. They may show you the books that you didn't buy that you looked at before. They're keeping a memory of you, and so within seconds they're reminding you of things that you might be interested in, or suggesting new ideas in an automated process. They know you by name. and they know you by your purchasing and web habits. In marketing, you can do look-alike. You can buy. You can pay to have somebody like Facebook or Google show your ad to people who look like the people who bought your product or service already. And so through a database, they look for those people that look alike, that look like your customers. And they will show your ad to people who look like your customers that you've already sold to. That's all done by database. And so databases, as I mentioned, if you have a marketing team, most companies are now recreating their marketing department to include database professionals and IT professionals because those are so important to marketing in this day and age. But I discovered that in 1992 when I went into marketing, and I already knew I hadn't learned Access yet, but I'd learned database. I'd learned DBase. And so I was able to take the database and mail merge with Word in order to send out letters. In the time it took one company to send out one letter, I could send out 200 letters, each one with their own individual address, and their own salutation and so forth. There was a form that we had to fill out in the corporation I was the marketing PR director for was a technical consulting firm, and they had to fill out a form in America, a government form. Even for private companies, they typically filled out the same form. The private companies would ask for the 254 form and the 255 form. And most of the companies made up one 254 and one 255 form and gave it to everybody. By learning Access, I created the form in Access. And so in just a few minutes, I could say, okay, we're going after a school project. So I can go in the database, I could search for all the projects our company had ever done related to schools. And I could pick out and put into this 254 or the 255 form just the most important project we'd worked on. So all of my 254 and 255 forms were customized to the project that we were doing, whereas the opponents were still doing they're using a typewriter to fill out their forms, so they'd do one and send it to everybody. So they kind of do a hodgepodge of different projects they had done. Gave us a big advantage by knowing that. I learned desktop publishing, which is the software you use to create a newspaper. You create it on your computer first, but that didn't happen until 1986. I was one of the first ones to learn a form of desktop publishing. I taught the first college class, perhaps at any university in the world, in desktop publishing in 1987. But again, it was by the fact that I was not afraid to learn new stuff with a computer. It allowed me to keep learning and learning. I started building web pages. The World Wide Web was created in 1993. The first browsers, anyway, I think it's a little bit earlier than that, the World Wide Web, but the first browser, Mosaic, was created then. I was creating web pages by 1995. None of that I was trained for. None of that stuff was part of my training. When I bought my own first newspaper, I had to learn how to do the darkroom work. I'd done a little bit of camera darkroom work, but now I had equipment that I'd never seen before, let alone operated before. Later on, I started doing video-based education. In 1994, became acquainted with a computer-based education system and saw how powerful it was. And so then later on in the 1990s, I started creating multimedia educational products myself, like what we're doing now. And so, when I was in Kazakhstan, I became their distance learning coordinator. I knew stuff that the younger people didn't know. Nobody in the Department of Journalism in Kazakhstan knew desktop publishing even. And that's an old technology. Like I said, I learned that in 1986. And here in 2017, nobody there knows desktop publishing still, 21 years later. In our department, I'm the only one who knows desktop publishing here. And yet it's the industry standard for creating a newspaper or for creating PDFs to upload to the computer for people to download, for doing nice looking publications. You need to know desktop publishing if you want to do nice looking PDFs, for example. My point is, if I had stopped learning, I probably would not be here today, for sure, because I would not be writing. My chapters I'm writing for this new book are about online marketing and advertising, and that's why I'm here, is because the editor of a book I co-authored 2 years ago was here, and he convinced them that they should bring me here. And that doesn't mean, to you, that may mean, well, yeah, you shouldn't be here. I don't know what you can think about me. But the point is that my career has been greatly prolonged because of lifelong learning that other people aren't doing. Right now, there was a survey recently of marketing executives, and the vast majority of them said that they felt overwhelmed by the fact that they were now being asked to do things that they had never been trained for and were not hired for. And not only were they being expected to know these things, but they were supposed to be attending now the executive meetings to tell the top executives how to proceed in relation to these marketing trends and so forth. Yet they themselves don't even know that. They don't know how to apply the marketing trends. But their companies depending on them to give them those important insights. They tried to hire younger people to help them with some of these trends that are more technology based. And they failed to hire new people, which is, I think, why now they're all reporting that they're recreating their entire team to include technical people, because they can't find people in the market with marketing degrees who understand the technology. So that was recreated because people in the marketing area had not been able to tune up on the technical aspects of marketing today. So when I first got into my career, or early in my career, I mentioned I bought my first newspaper when I was 25, and I had to learn all aspects of that newspaper. And I sold it after 2 years. I applied some of the things that I learned. I didn't learn from Covey, because Covey hadn't written his book yet, but I learned similar ideas that I employed myself to double the income of that newspaper and to sell it for a nice profit after a couple of years. Go back, pay for my master's degree, and immediately after I finished my coursework, got hired by a newspaper chain to be their editor, and then the publisher of 4 newspapers there. All of it because I had been interested in learning new stuff. There was, sorry if I'm redundant if I mentioned this before, but when I was publishing the 4 newspapers, while I was finishing my master's thesis, another company came in and the owner of the 4 newspapers I was publishing wanted to sell the newspapers. There was an economic downturn at the time. And so a bigger chain came and looked at them. And when they got done looking at the books and so forth, they took me out to lunch. And I said, Ken, the newspapers aren't a good deal, really. They're okay, but they're not a real good deal. But you're a good deal. We can find publishers who have a journalism background. We can find publishers who have an advertising background, but we can't find publishers who have both. And so you're a good deal to us. You've learned both. And if you will come with the newspapers, we will buy the newspapers and make you a part owner. I turned them down because I had my first opportunity then to teach at a university. But that experience nevertheless had left a big impression on me that the more I knew, the more valuable I was. And that may be why I went ahead and kept learning and learning and learning, because I wanted to be more valuable to people. So lifelong learning is really important if you want to succeed. If you get straight A's and you don't continue in lifelong learning, and somebody else who got straight C's does, within a couple of years they'll be ahead of you in the career. In this day and age, more than ever, lifelong learning is absolutely essential. Or you'll be like these marketing executives that I talked about who are just feeling totally overwhelmed. They have no idea what they're doing in their job because they're now being asked to do stuff they've never been trained to do, and they haven't been kept up with it. And that's the majority of marketing executives right now. So People in other careers, same thing. When I was hired also in the 1990s, when I was taking a break from journalism, I was hired to help develop a program for people who were being laid off from the nuclear industry. They had been involved in the defense part of nuclear industry, so they were creating atomic bombs, nuclear bombs and stuff, or the ingredients for nuclear bombs. And we had ended the Cold War with the Soviet Union, and so we didn't need more nuclear bombs. So they laid off a very large portion of our local workforce all at once in cutting back from the employment in that nuclear reservation. And they hired me to help develop a retraining program and help them find new roles, new jobs, new roles in life. I think I mentioned that already. And one thing I did was to teach them Covey principles. But my point with that is that it was interesting and kind of, well, let me illustrate it by one person that I remember talking to. He had gotten his degree in computer science. He had gone through the industry. He was now a fairly high-level manager. He got laid off with 5,000 other people. And his frustration was now, even though he had a computer science degree, he had no idea how to use a PC. No idea. He had a secretary doing his PC work on the job. He had not grown up. He had not kept abreast of what was going on in the computer world, and he did not know anything about a PC. I had to teach him how to use a mouse, basically. I've never seen anybody so frustrated, because here he was, a technology person, a computer science degree, and he didn't know how to use a computer anymore. Now that's kind of the extreme example, but things are changing so rapidly that it's not so extreme anymore. You step aside, you stop learning, you're going to be outdated very, very, very quickly. So the mental dimension of sharpening your saw is not just taking a break, not thinking anymore, not studying anymore. To the contrary, it's a matter of finding time to continue to improve your skills and update your skills, or you won't be effective in the future. And the social dimension, Dr. Covey, if you recall, the habits 4, 5, and 6 are all about how to achieve success interpersonally. And again, his perspective is that the greatest success in life, the greatest successes in life come from interpersonal success. And so if you're not improving your social dimension, if you're not trying to improve that part of your life, then you're not likely to be real successful in life, because that's part of the interpersonal success that you're trying to achieve. So if nothing else, at least be studying Dr. Covey's habits 4, 5, and 6, so you can be a more effective interpersonally. Part of the we'd introduced the idea, I think, earlier about PPC, and that is production versus production capacity. And so this idea of sharpen the saw is really about PPC. It's about keeping up your production capacity so you can keep up your production. His example in the book was a guy comes in, and let's say he didn't give the example what it was, but some company that had big equipment to do their production. I could imagine it being a printing press. A printing press costs millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. And so, but this guy comes in and they have lots of work they can do. And so he says, we're going to really push out the work. We're going to run this machine day and night and do all this work. We're going to set records. Let's go, go, go. Really good work ethic and goal-centered and so forth. But he does great. And the people are praising him. The executives, the CEO is thinking he's amazing. And then suddenly the press breaks down. Now they have to spend $10 million to replace some of the press units that they had worn out. They hadn't been taken care of properly. Now what is his position with the company? he's probably going to get fired at that point. So here's somebody who was, looking at as absolutely amazing is going to get fired because he didn't do PC. He did P, but no PC. On the more closer at home, in America, most people outside the cities own a house with a yard with grass on it. So they have to buy a lawnmower to take care of their grass. Dr. Covey had the very same experience I did. Busy person. He never took care of his lawnmower. And so, if you take care of your lawnmower, if you sharpen the blade in the lawnmower, if you check the oil, if you, do all the things you need to do for maintenance, your lawnmower can last many years. If you don't, you're buying a new $200 to $300 lawnmower every couple of years, which is more or less what I was doing. I was ignoring my lawnmower, and so did Dr. Covey. They had to replace his lawnmower. He wasn't doing the PC, just P and no PC. So that's the analogy, of course, with ourselves is sharpen the saw is our PC. Enhance our production capability so we can be more productive. If we don't enhance our production capability, our PC, if we don't do the maintenance work, if we don't update in some cases, whatever it takes to be productive in the current environment, then we've lost it. We are no good, basically. Whether it's because we're ill, because we haven't taken care of our bodies, or we're outdated because we haven't taken care of our minds, we're uninspired because we haven't taken care of our spirit. Whatever it is, we have put ourselves in a position where we not only could get fired or, at a younger age, lose our jobs, whatever it might be, because we haven't done our PC work, our production capability work. So, very vital that you do that. If you're recalling that we're coming to the end of this book, we'll be looking at other experts over these last 5 weeks. This is our last week, I think, we'll spend on Covey. There's some additional videos to watch this week on Moodle that I'll be putting on Moodle. But just in review, we remember the being proactive is kind of the basis for the whole thing. The belief that you can change yourself, that you can, again, that's also very associated to PC, that you are capable of making your life better by making better decisions, by improving your interaction with other people, by making changes like Dr. Covey suggests in his book, and many other things. Again, lifelong learning, that sort of stuff, that in a proactive way we decide that we're not going to be victims of our environment. We're not going to be victims of the fact that life is going by us too fast and we're getting outdated. We're going to take charge. We're going to say, okay, I'm going to take charge. I'm going to be proactive. If I don't have a good relationship with the boss, I'm going to do something about it. If I don't have a good relationship with my children, I'm going to do something about it. And then it's a matter of, obviously making good decisions on how to proceed, but that you can and will do something about it. Being with the end in mind is deciding what is most important. When you get done with your life, what do you want people to be able to say about you? What is that core passion? As I mentioned, his 8th habit now, that in a different book, is trying to build your life around your passion, what you think is really important, what your mission in life is. Really create a passion and go after that passion. That will turn you from being effective to great. Putting first things first is your management self. How do I manage my time? How do I find time for the PC development? How do I find time to do projects that will help me become great, that other people aren't doing because they're all, they're just tied down with the trivia of life, and they're not taking time to do things that'll make them great. The interpersonal skills to think win-win, and looking for that third option that they're talking about through synergy, listening to people and appreciating their perspectives, seeking first to understand, then be understood, so forth. All vital in our achieving success, and then keeping it going. Sharpening the saw, making sure our PC is high so that we can be more productive throughout our lives, that we feel inspired, that we feel energetic, that we feel competent, that we don't respond to a survey that we're overwhelmed because we haven't been able to keep up with stuff. That we take time to do what's necessary to be productive in an ongoing way. Well, I want to run one more video as we end this, and this is a tribute to Dr. Covey. He was about 80 years old when he died in 1912, 2012, I mean. He was about 80, but he was out riding a bicycle, keeping up his energy when he got hit by a car. And his family was able to gather around him in the hospital to say their last goodbyes before he passed away. So anyway, I'm going to go out of this. I'm going to stop the video, and we'll watch this final tribute to Dr. Covey as kind of a summary as well as a tribute to him.
Okay, good morning everyone to our lecture and all of my friends. And today we are presenting the reading to learn, which is we are from group 5. And I'm Hugh Chao Ying, and he is Li Wei Hian, Li Jie Ying, and Teo Lim Kai. And I will be the first presenter. So for the first, what is the effective reading? Reading is a very important skill for success, as everyone knows. And reading actively actually can promote understanding, increases concentration, and improve our retention. So if you had done these 3 reading actively points, then you can get your effective and efficient. So for the purpose of the reading, student needs to identify the reason for undertaking a reading task. So thinking about the purpose helps you to focus on your task. Okay, for tips to reading actively, you can get an overview of the gist of a subject or topic and determine if more concentrated reading is necessary. And the third one is gather supporting evidence for a project or essay, summarize main points, understand material, critique or evaluate, and enjoy for leisure. So this is your tips in your reading skills. And for the next slide is your purpose and your rate. So let us see the first purpose. To read for an overview of a chapter, your rate is fast. So you fastly go through your chapter and overview for it. And to identify the main ideas so you can explain them to another student. So at this stage, you can slowly to identify your ideas or get some main points in your works so that you can get more explanation in that. And the third one is you fast to locate the specific information, then you slowly to understand it and use it in your words. And for the last one, you gain to detail critical understanding slowly and underline what you want in your works and take a note. So this is extra notes for all of you, which is SQ3R. Actually, this SQ3R is very famous in everywhere, which is our lecture have taught us before. SQ3R means that survey, questions, read, recall, and review. So SQ3R is the most recommended strategy because it can be adapted to most purposes and circumstances. So let us see what is the SQ3R. Survey. Scan the text and identify its structure, and do you need to read this text? And questions is ask yourself about each questions. Read the whole text quickly and don't stop even if there is something difficult that you don't understand. And the fourth is recall. Look back at your query questions and can you identify which sections help you ask yourself. And the last one is for review. Read important sections again slowly. Remember why are you reading for that, and take notes so that you can remember helpful information and where you found it. So this one is the last PPT in my presentation part, and this picture is taken from our textbook. So you can see that we can prepare first, and then we absorb the new ideas and record those notes that we're taking and memorize it, and we can review and apply it in our task or even in our work. So let me pass to the next presenter.
Good morning, my name is Lee Wei Hian. And how do you read to learn? There are 4 steps of active reading. First is prepare, and second is reading. Third is capture the key ideas, and the last is the reviewing. So the first step of the active reading, create a purpose or quest for reading. This will help you become more active, engaged, and less bored. Schedule some short breaks after complete the quest in a reasonable time. And turn the title of each major section of the reading into a question. You can use your critical thinking skill of questioning what the author is saying. This is the alternative approach for the preparing to read. Start with the chapter title as your primary heading, then create subheading for each section, replacing each section's title in terms of questions. And the second approach is start with the chapter chapter title as you center and create branches for each section within the chapter. Make sure you place each item as a question. And the second step is reading. You should look for the answer to question you wrote. And pay particular attention to key points, especially the first and the last sentence in each paragraph. And the third is thinking. Think about the relations among section title, broad-faced words, and graphics. And skip the unimportant points. You can skim quickly over parts of the section that are not related to the key questions. And the third step of the active reading is capture the key ideas. Reread the sections. You can highlight or pencil to call out the key ideas. Less is more. And make it objective to highlight no more than 10% of the text. It is same meaning of the less is more. Maybe you have a important sentence and you just highlight the word of 1 or 2 keyword of the important sentence. And think critically before you highlight. Your choice will have a big impact on what you study and learn. And make annotation in the margins. Maybe you can use some symbol to make your notes. And the last of the last step of the active readings, reviewing what you have read. And next, write a summary of your assigned reading in your own words. And then you can cover up the answer to your question and answer from your notes. Particular use. Think about how this new knowledge can use in the other place or next class. And answer the review questions. And the last is combine and review the notes. You can combine your reading notes you can combine your reading notes with your class notes, and review brought together. And this is strategy for textbook reading. Pace yourself, schedule your reading, get yourself in the right space, avoid distractions, avoid reading fatigue, read your most difficult assignment early and make your reading interesting. So I will pass the presentation to my roommate.
My name is Li Jing, and next I will tell you how to deal with the spatial text. For the mathematics test, you do not skip over these spatial elements and read the formulas and make sure that you understand and substitute the actual numbers and apply it to your real life situations and do all the exercise that you have. Don't go on the next section until you master all the material in the current section, and if you face the problem, please seek help if need be. For the scientific text, look for the hypotheses and list them in the column of your note pages, and then make notes on the proof or your disproof on the next column. Use the 5W1H, which is when, why, which, who, and how, about the hypothesis and the experiments used to prove or disprove them. For the social science text, for example, like the history, economics, and political science classes, make sure that you involve the interpretation where the author's points of view and theories are as important as the facts that present. And you can use the critical thinking skills and record your reflections in the margins in your notes, and read the primary source documents, which you can search it in internet, and start by understanding the authors of the document and his or her agenda. And you can also infer their intended audience. For the foreign language text, you can provide with the invaluable practice and many new vocab words in your new language. And you also can analyzing a short portion of the text. And if you really can't make out the meaning, please look up in the dictionary and try again. But don't to rely on a dictionary. And make sure you schedule significantly more time that you will normally allocate for reading in your own language, and don't shy from doing this work. And you just can practice many times. Note to English language learners. You can struggle with the high reading level required of the college students, and you may check for the resources and never feel the resources are only for the weak students, because as a second language learner, possess a rich linguistic experience that many American-born students should envy. And you just simply need to account for the difficulties that you will face and practice many times. How to integrating reading with family time. Don't expect that often get long periods of uninterrupted reading time, and don't schedule that have the heavy reading for early in the morning or late at night when the children are sleeping. And you also can read to children and then tell them that it's time for everybody to read their own book. Take your reading with you, and you also can share your childcare responsibilities with others who also have children. For the online reading, you can ask the additional questions in order to fully understand the assignment. First, you can look at the URL. Okay, this URL can give you important information about the reliability and intentions of the site. Next, look at the page parameter and the mesh head at the top of the page, and make sure that you check the quality of the information first, then consider what others are saying about the site. Last but not least, trust your impressions about the materials. Now I pass to my next teammate, Xiamen Kai.
My name is Xiamen Kai. Now I will present the importance of building your vocabulary. Okay, why learning vocabulary is important? First, it will give your child the ability to say what he or she means, and it can help your child understand what other people are saying and what she or he is reading. And third is bolster their ability to grab ideas and think more logically. Fourth is boosts the child power of persuasion. And fifth is it can help the child make a good impression on others. And how to improve your vocabulary. First, you can set your goal. You must clear what is the main goal and purpose. Is it for job, exam, or personal reason? And you can set a target that you can learn how many new words a day in a time or in a period. The second is learn a word a day. You can developing own word list to study. Third is read and then read some more. Factors are important to approach reading effectively. By remember, start small, aim tall, read classic novel, and sign up to receive a new word per day. Fourth is engage in conversation. You can simply talk with other people because it can help you improve your English. And you can discover new words. Fifth is you play vocabulary game often. You can play online word memory game, and you can create flashcard. Sixth is use new word in everyday language. For example, you can talk with other or type with people by using the social media. Seven is write and then write some more. You can start an online blog that you can update your current status when you're free. Or you can write a poem or short song because it can improve your grammar. 8 is link word. For example, you can link word for different language that sound similar.
And for the conclusion part is, this is what we want to show all of you. If one cannot enjoy reading a book over and over again, there is no use in reading it at all. So this is from Oscar Wilde. Okay, and Q&A. We prepare 4 questions to all of you. Like for the first one is, what do SQ3R means? It is survey, questions, read, record, and review as just now what I said. And questions 2 is, which of the following are not the step of the active reading? So capture of the key ideas, reviewing, reading, and preparing is in the step of the active reading. So the question is not. Question 3, how to deal with special texts of mathematics? So the answer is 3rd and the 4th. Read the formulas and make sure understand, do all exercises. And the last question is, which of the following not the importance of the learning vocabulary? So the answer ABC is in the importance, but the last one makes the life of child easier is not the importance of the learning vocabulary. So thank you.